For more on this, we're going to be joined via Zoom by Professor Gilbert Khadiagala, an international relations analyst, to weigh in on the developments in Russia regarding the Wagner Group and the war between Moscow and Kiev. Good afternoon, Prof. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Yeah, good afternoon, Lizelle.
Prof, the million-dollar question at this point, we're trying to understand or gain clarity on the fate of Prigozhin. We're also trying to understand what this means in relation to the Lukashenko deal that had been brokered. He's moved to Belarus. How do you think these dynamics are affecting what's coming to the fore as well in relation to the Russia-Ukraine war?
I think the story here is that somebody is not telling the truth. I think Lukashenko looks, from his statement, more believable on this matter, that he was here at some point, but he's not here. He's back he said actually in the statement that he's back to St. Petersburg, putting a very clear location that he has returned to Russia. So I think the larger story also is that it's not very clear whether Mr. Prigozhin has been forgiven for the crime that he committed, the rebellion of June 24th. And therefore, if there are still charges going to be pressed against him, despite the fact that I think we got the impression that he had been forgiven and therefore he was going into exile in Minsk. But if that is not correct, it means somebody still wants to get him. And that somebody would have to be Putin, or at least a force within Russia that wants him to pay for his crimes that he committed, for defection from the line that was established that he should not actually be a traitor, as Putin described him on the day that the event occurred. So it's not very clear whether he is actually safe at this moment, whether there is maybe some attempt to hide the fact that he will go back to where he was supposed to go. And maybe they are trying to negotiate what to do with his force. Because I think, as we heard from the previous report, his forces have not moved to the military camps in Belarus. And if they are therefore not moved, it means they are still in Russia. And probably the negotiations are taking place between him and the Russian authorities about what to do with these Wagner forces. Should they go back to the front line in Ukraine, or maybe should they be redeployed somewhere else, or should they just go back to the military camp in Belarus? So I think the story I'm putting here is that this is shrouded in mystery because nobody is actually willing to come up and tell us exactly what the true picture of Mr. Prigozhin's fate is, and broadly the role of the Wagner Group, because it's a very formidable force. So it has to be deployed somewhere.
Yes.
Whether it's on the front lines, whether some of them can go, may probably be sent to the African bases where the Wagner forces have been deployed, or whether in fact they can be exiled in Belarus. But I really doubt that theory of a military force that has been very active being retired at this early stage in their careers, if we could put it that way.
No, Prof, you're obviously helping us put some of the pieces of the puzzle together. On the back of what you just echoed, it seems that Russian President Vladimir Putin is playing his cards very close to his chest. And I wonder, you'd anticipate or perhaps predict what his next move might be in relation to the war in the Ukraine? I'm asking this because obviously Putin's also allowed thousands of men towards the Kremlin, and we also question whether this could backfire on him. Is this an admission that the Wagner Group is too powerful to defeat? How do you think that also impacts the internal dynamics of Russia?
No, it doesn't. It does impact the internal dynamics because if there is an acknowledgement that the Russian army really can't win the war in Ukraine, and it was disproportionately dependent on the Wagner force, So it would make sense for Putin really to not to appear very weak, particularly if his army is not playing the role that it should be playing. But on the other hand, he could be waiting for things to cool down and then just send the Wagner force back to the front line in Ukraine, particularly since the Ukrainians have launched a counteroffensive that is actually making, from reports that we get, it's making some success in the war. So maybe the Wagner force has just been retired temporarily, awaiting the opportunity when they can actually go back to the front line. And also there are reports that the Russian army is actually not doing a good job in that war. They could be hiding them and then producing them at a very strategic moment when Russia thinks that the Wagner force would actually be more effective in countering the counteroffensive from Ukraine. But the other thing we should remember is that the NATO Secretary General today came up with a statement that said NATO is actually monitoring where the Wagner Group is and where Mr. Prigozhin is. So that means the attention of Western intelligence services are on precisely where this force is going to go. And particularly if it's going to go to the front line, it is going to be important that maybe Ukraine be informed in advance if the Wagner Group is going to be a problem again.